And because we started this conversation with, being a writer, being an author, being a poet, I feel like, when we are in the flow state, that puts us in a position where we organically receive the inspiration to act. Like you said, when you're out in nature, you're hiking and a poem comes to you. Or how in our own experience as an author, it's like a story comes and there's a right time to act, and then we act on it and the book happens.
The more that you do the things that make you feel in what you call the flow state, or the more things that you do that you feel are leading you in the right direction, even if you don't necessarily know the end path, you should seek out those things.
And so most of your books are about, fantasy and fiction. And you have a cat, which is in your background. Yeah. What's it called? It's a he or a she?
It's a he. I figured in the podcast. So.
Nice. It's such a good, it's like adding character, and he, like, even he wants to be a part of it. That's so cute. So, hi everybody. This is Avilasha. I'm also known as storyteller earthling because that's so exactly what I am, a storyteller who is an earthling. So the Being an Earthling podcast is about, the idea that we are here on this planet briefly. And I would want to look at it like we are on a trip because I love traveling. And when we look at life like that, it makes it so worthwhile, it makes it meaningful, and it makes it fun. And, we kind of have a better life experience when we look at it like that. We change our perspective because everything is about focus. So since we're here on this planet briefly and we are travelers, we are supposed to live like we're traveling, like experience the best a place has to offer and allow the journey to inspire us. And it's not something that we should do, but it's something that we do organically as a human being, because that's what we seek ultimately in life, to feel good and to have a meaningful life experience, right? And I feel like a lot of people, who have chosen to follow their passion and follow their dreams and live in a way that is meaningful and happy and joyous, they project what it is like to be an earthling in the true sense of the term. And so, I feel like, when we look at other people's stories, or what I call as travelogues, we are inspired to, or probably we find some kind of assurance, some kind of answers in our own. And it helps us, it's like a beacon of light. It's like we're not alone. And what we really want and what we want to experience is something that is legit. And I feel like when we look at other people's stories and other people's travelogue and their journey as a creator, we learn a lot. So this is the purpose of the podcast, to bring the journeys and stories of other people. And today I have with me, Mason Schneider. He is an author and he's a poet. I feel like Mason is somebody who's really accomplished, he's published, he's written 4 books, right?
Yes. 4 books.
Yes.
My most recent book I put out is a new adult kind of age for people to 20 to 30. But I think a lot of people could get something good from it, of any age really, as long as they're at least about 20, because it has some more mature themes in it, and it talks more about some of those issues that we face into adulthood. So it's kind of a story, but it's also self-help, and I've also incorporated my poetry into it as well. So that one's called My 19th Year, and all of them you can find on Amazon. And yeah, there's a link, on my Instagram to get to them and all that stuff. So pretty easy to find. You could just search for my name on Amazon and they'd all pop up.
Most of your work is, you write a lot about fantasy fiction, right? And if I'm not right, and of course, even in your poetry, I found that theme, of fantasy fiction and nature, because you wrote a letter to the earth, you listened to the moon, and nature and fantasy. So why did you specifically choose fantasy and fiction and nature? What draws you to it? Why is it your muse?
So I guess, initially what makes me want to do that is always as a kid, the happiest I've felt, and even today, is when I'm out in nature. That's when I feel the most present, I guess, or the most naturally the way that we humans should feel is when I'm surrounded by nature. So of course I like to try to bring that element into my writing, so other people, could be inspired to get out there themselves, or just to see, these books are about magic and stuff like that. And to me, nature is like real life magic, you know? So in a lot of ways, you know, I was inspired by the sense of adventure that nature brings me. It's like when you go on a hike or something somewhere, it's like you're in a movie almost or something, you know, you're walking around and you'll see things that you're not going to see just sitting around your house. So I always try to incorporate some element of nature into, you know, my poems or these fantasy books and stuff, just because it's a huge part of me. And I definitely want to share that with other people. So I just always kind of thought, you know, I would do something else, and then in addition to it, I would write books. And that is kind of my situation still today, is where I continue to work a normal job and I write my books on the side. But ultimately, my goal is someday, you know, just to make enough money to survive purely off of being an author. And I'm super happy that that's the passion I'm pursuing. So ever since I was about 10, I could tell you the thing that really made me fall in love with writing books especially was I was in like third or fourth grade, and we were assigned this assignment where we were supposed to write a short story. And it was like the first kind of chance to write like a real narrative, you know? And I remember I wrote it, and like the class and the teacher liked it so much that they let me read it as like a third or fourth grader to like the kindergartner and first graders. And so like getting to read something that I had written even at a young age like that, and seeing all these kids, like they were laughing a lot. I put a lot of humor in it because, you know, little kids, we even all like to laugh as adults. And they were like waiting on the edge of their seats of what would happen next. Like I'll never forget that moment. That is definitely something that inspired me to continue to write. And then, yeah, ever since I was, I would say 17 or so is when I really got into writing poetry. And at first I used it mostly just as like an outlet, or almost like a therapeutic type of thing, to express like the different feelings I would go through in different situations in my life, whether it was romantic relationships or any type of relationships, really, you know? And so it became a really good way as an outlet of my emotions. But then I just kind of fell in love with writing poetry anyway. And I started to write a lot of like nature poetry because I mean, I would be out there, like, you know, I hike very, very often, and I would just get like inspiration. It's almost like I wouldn't set out to write a poem. It would more just be like, it would come to me, or maybe not all the words would right away, but it'd be like, no, this is a moment like that I want to share with other people. And so I would do my best to write it in a poetic fashion. And then, yeah, after I wrote that first book and I like had it in my hands, I was like, oh man, I like completely fell in love with writing books all over again. And then shortly after, at 19, I started writing like my young adult series. And yeah, just in the last year, I've put out that fourth book that's like partially poetry and partially self-help. To some people, it's like they don't really seem to understand just how magical like some of these things are to me, but a lot of people do understand it. And I think the reason why I like sit down to actually take the time to write about it is I want those people who don't understand to maybe see how magical some of those moments like out in nature are. But yeah, when that actual moment happens, it's usually after I've walked for a little while and I've like seen or just felt some type of way being out there, where it's almost kind of hard to describe, but it's like, and I hate to just keep saying magical, but it is a very magical thing. It's like, it's like kind of like what I think you have described before as like the flow state kind of thing, where it's just like something kind of comes to you and you feel drawn to, even if you're not going to share it with others, to put it down on paper, to bring some type of substance to it rather than it just being your experience, right? And so like to me, I love like seeing wildlife. So when I see like even like a deer out hiking or something, so a lot of people, they're like, oh, it's a deer, you know, like big deal. But to me, it's like, wow, like I saw this living creature like within pretty close proximity, and it's like it just makes you feel a little bit smaller. You know, it makes you feel a little bit more connected, smaller in the sense that, you know, we're all just on this like giant dirt ball that's spinning right in the middle of space, and it's a good type of feeling small. It puts things into perspective, and it makes you kind of feel like, you know, some of your everyday problems aren't so important in the grand scheme of things. There's not as much to truly worry about, because you can feel really content and peaceful just by taking a step outside, you know, and getting to experience like some of those animals and the trees and the moon and stuff like that. So I think when I have those magical moments, it's kind of like you said, it brings me into that flow state, and the words come out a lot easier for sure. And there's a lot of emotion that gets put into the words. And like I said, poetry is so great for describing things that like logical sentences can't always just describe.
Yeah, I was muting myself. What you said about, noticing an animal, like, and how it makes you feel, that feeling and and then allowing that feeling and bottling that feeling into a poem is what, it's the act of writing that. Like in my own experience, but I feel like it's like perfume, for example. You're out there and you feel the whiff, the scent, and then you bottle that so that you can later on experience it. And the act of, writing that poem is like reliving that. It's like you become a co-creator in the process. And I completely relate to what you have just described. And yes, it is the flow state. It's like, I'm like sounding philosophical, but it's like we go through life. And again, you said we're here in this, tiny, it's like a blue orb when we're like floating in it in space, right? And when you look at it like that, it looks, when you say that, we feel like we are small. Absolutely. It's like, we, sometimes what happens is, life causes us to get into those moments where we like, negative emotion. We feel sad or we're frustrated or disappointed. And then moments like this, and then writing about it, I feel like in my case also it was writing. Like writing especially gets us into this flow state where we kind of are reminded that, there's a lot more than like these small negative emotion doesn't mean it's not important at all. In fact, it's just a passing, and there's so much more to life, So I want to know if writing, gets you into that flow state, because you mentioned flow. Because for me, it does. Like when you write, you start writing. I'm not necessarily saying that writing poetry or writing story, but just writing, like journaling or letting thoughts into the paper or your laptop, whatever. And you feel. Do you also experience that feeling of flow?
Yeah, I would definitely say writing, can help. It can be one way of many ways to like get into that flow state. Like I said, being out in nature, that puts me in the flow state where it makes me want to write. But even other activities, such as just writing itself, can kind of get me into that state, because you kind of put like your regular world away for a minute, and it's just your own internal world that you're expressing on the paper. And, it's one way to, I don't even really want to say organize your thoughts, because it doesn't even really matter. Like sometimes when you're writing, you just want to get it out, and you can deal with organizing it later if you need it for whatever reason you're writing it for. But definitely, I would say, especially with poetry, it helps get me into that state where I can just kind of put the world away for a little bit and just express whatever is within me. And poetry is so great, and writing in general is great, not just for sharing those wonderful moments, but also, like I said, helping you get through some of those negative emotions that we do face. So all in all, it's just a truly wonderful thing. I would recommend trying writing to anyone, even if you don't think you would be very good at it or whatever, because there's really no being good at it. It's just you sharing what's within you. So definitely a good way to get in the flow state. Even for me, playing things like basketballs or like volleyball for fun, those type of things, I just completely forget whatever troubles are going on.
It's like what you said about like not just writing, a lot of things like nature, even like sports. I've also heard about this thing in music. If you play music or or whatever, I feel like immersing in a task, and which gives you joy, not just any task, something that you're drawn to, and getting that, doing it, putting your attention to it in a way that is you are inspired from within. I think inspired creation is what I was looking for a term. It's like you're inspired to create, whether it's playing basketball, whether it's writing poetry or nature, and it's different things for different people. It's exactly what, when I say that we all have a dominant creative form of expression, and we use that, it's like we're organically drawn to it. A lot of people in today's world, it's because of social media and everything. It's like if everybody tries to not listen to their what actually inspires them, but rather are influenced by what is trending and what is like, if somebody social media says that, hey, writing is fun, and even if this person does not get, say, a joy out of writing, but rather like making music or playing sports, we tend to ignore that. So do you also feel like, intuition plays a very important role, whether you are writing a book? Well, like, for example, I want to know about the creative process. What is the creative process for you like? So try to get, it's like when I wrote my second book, Morning. So it's like I had a story in my mind and it was there for some time. There was the right time somehow didn't happen. When I started writing it, I sat down and I was like, okay, I'm going to write this book. I felt like my intuition played a very important role. I was guided in every step of the way. Like, okay, I'm going going through life and okay, this experience, inspiring me. Maybe a song I heard, a movie I watched, or people I spoke with, things I spoke about with them. I felt like not just my past, but all of those things in real time kind of made its way into the book. So if you can, take say a book or all of your books and just give me a brief of how your creative process is like and what role does intuition play in it?
I can totally relate to what you said, basically about having the story in your mind and not even like necessarily needing to put it out right away. Because like sometimes I'll have the idea with all of my books pretty much that I've wrote, except for maybe the most recent one, that one, current emotions that I was facing. But I have had like the idea or the general idea of the story in my head for some time. And like you said, it's like a combination of, both my own creativity, but also like all the different influences of things that I've liked coming together in my mind and like mixing together to form their own story. So I like will have had the story in my mind for a long time. And then when I finally do like feel it's time to like, I have some extra time to get to writing a whole book, I will just start writing it without taking any notes or anything like that. And I will just kind of see where it goes for sure. And intuition definitely plays like a huge part in that. Definitely just like kind of letting it take me in a way. And I trust the process of it as well. And then by the time I reach like maybe a fourth to halfway into the book, then maybe I'll start taking some notes of where I want it to go. But I don't write anything out very long. It's just kind of like, this would be cool if I made this happen, this would be cool, and this would be cool. But it's also interesting that you said that like your real time experiences then go into it, because I might have had the idea for like one of my books for a whole year or even more, right? And then when I actually go to write it, not only do I incorporate like some of those experiences from the past, but I start incorporating the things that are happening to me in real time as well. And so it does feel very like synchronized, like almost like you were supposed to start writing it at this time, because now you have these elements you can add into it that maybe it wouldn't have been as good of a story, or it wouldn't have been the same story you ended up with if you had just started writing it back then, because like that one book that I most recently put out, some of it took place, it's a lot about my own life. It has a lot of my own experiences in it. A lot of it took place even when I was like 17 to 19 years old. So like it's called my 19th year, so obviously. But I also, wouldn't have made it as good of a book if I hadn't had the time to process all that stuff that happened to me for a couple of years after. So I put not only my experiences from that time, but I also got to put, my perspective of having be a little bit older now. When I actually wrote it, and like how I got through all those emotions in order to potentially help other people who went through similar situations. So definitely, I totally trust the process, totally trust the intuition side of things, or the mystical kind of side of writing, where like sometimes it just seems like you were meant to write that part of the book on that day.
Yeah, I mean, I completely relate. Absolutely. Like, what happened with me also, like, sometimes what happens is you experience things, you like in your book, The 19th Year, you had your experiences in the, set timeline, and then immediately you don't feel it. But later on, when you grow up, few years on the line, you look back and you get like I feel like we detach ourselves from that particular time frame, and then we kind of have the opportunity to look at it from a third eye, like, bird's eye point of view, bird's eye point of view. We're not really into that. We kind of we can separate ourselves from the situation and then, write that. And then our present also, like, we're guided. I feel like that, okay, we can do this, we can do that. So it's a very, like, I personally love, the whole creative process, even in the book writing process. And because, both of us, I feel like what you said, that eventually you want a life where you just want to write books. But not just books for me, it's more like just write, travel, write, do what inspires, live in a way that is inspired from within. And somewhere down the line, we're not there yet. Like, there are so many constraints and resistances. Like, what do you think? Like, how is it possible to have that dream? And you feel like, and then what can we do to make sure that we can achieve that? I don't know if it makes sense.
Yeah, totally makes. Well, for the number one thing I would say is like I said, I put up my first book when I was 18, and I'm 23 now, right? And in those 5 years, I haven't had any significant amount of sales when it comes to anything that I could even come close to living off for any time period whatsoever, right? But it hasn't dampened my spirits at all. Like, you have to think about it. When you have big dreams like that, you're not just always going to become an overnight success. And when I was like 18 and I first wrote that book, I had kind of a naive idea in my head. I was like, yeah, I've written my first book, and now people will just see it and buy it, and I'll make enough money to survive. But no, I forgot the whole part of where you have to try to promote it and get it out there and stuff. And even though, like, creative careers, whether it's writing or music or anything singing along those lines, making movies, films, like, a lot of people are hesitant to even go after those kind of dreams because, they see the very minimal success rate, right? But it's like, I think the biggest thing is if you just truly believe in yourself, and it's just really not giving up. It's like, you can't give in to those type of thoughts, because I'm pretty sure all of the people that have made it, even though it might seem like a small number, all of those people never gave up on it, obviously, right? Otherwise they wouldn't be there. So that to me is the biggest thing. It doesn't matter if it takes 5, 10, 20 years or whatever. It personally doesn't matter to me because it's what I'm passionate about. But I would not regret the path that I've chosen for a second, and I will continue to strive until I make it happen no matter what.
You are an inspiration already. Like, what you said, like a lot of people, a lot of us, I think everybody at some point when we are really, we have a passion, for example, we have a calling, but then because we live in a world, a society, we are so like driven, and thanks to social media especially, it's like we are reluctant to, pursue that. And that path that you said, like in your path, it's not linear. It's not like you just wrote a book and you achieve success, which is what is projected in movies and books. Like, it is not true. It's far from the truth. It's always going, it's a wave. Like, we'll have good moments, we'll have bad moments, and it's a journey of constantly being honest with ourselves and asking ourselves why we are doing what we're doing. And a lot of people, I feel like, give up very quickly. You have written 4 books. I understand. It's like, it takes a lot of, I wouldn't say courage, but more like self-belief to write 4 books. Because I feel like as a writer, I think stories come to our head a lot of times, but most of us don't act upon it. And not just stories, like even music or movies. We tell ourselves, we have this belief system in our heads that, I can't do it. I'm not qualified, or I don't have a degree, or I relate to it because my own journey, beyond being a writer it has caused me to act like an entrepreneur at certain points of time. And I didn't realize it. I had this question in my head that I'm an entrepreneur. I don't have an MBA. I mean, I don't know how, the market works, all these things, numbers and figures. But that is something that, we kind of create our own resistance, in our own path. And I feel like what you just said, a lot of people needs to hear that, because it's like you are somebody who's living it. And, you have taken those risks and you have asked those questions and you have found those answers. And because somebody, and such a young age as well, because a lot of people, like, you're just starting out, a few people, there are people who started, 50 and, 40. And I follow somebody called Gary Vee, who is also, I don't know if I'm sure you know him, yeah. So he keeps on saying, he keeps on saying that, we have this pressure on people, like, that if you are in our 20s or 30s, it's like, you have to figure everything out, or that you cannot start when you're 40. All these notions are bullshit, because it's not true. We can start whenever, and you don't have to have it all figured out and these concepts are very like societal, and we kind of have this in condition in our heads. And also because you're somebody who has lived through it, and you're somebody who knows where you're going and all your journey. So I would want to understand what success means to you. And before I even ask you, it's like again quoting Gary Vee, because he's been promoting this thing. He says success is not about money, numbers or figures. It's about waking up in the morning and being happy that I'm doing something I really like. Waking up in the morning, not regretting. And it's like, and I personally feel I believe in that myself, because like when you have numbers and figures as your, benchmark, it's like if we're talking, say, 1 million today, when we reach 1 million, it will be like somebody else is doing 100 million. And then when we reach 100 million, it will be like a billion. So I feel like numbers are never, a benchmark. And I just want to know your take on what success means, and, echoing your.
Yeah, for sure. What I would say for starters is, even whatever age you are, like you were saying, 30, 40, 50, 60, whatever, you should act now on those creative ventures. Like, who is society to tell you that, you have to be doing this or this by a certain age? It's like, that's boring anyway, right? To just abide by those like societal norms. And I'm not hating on like the people that, enjoy their regular jobs and stuff, but it's like, if you have some type of creative passion within you, why wouldn't you get started on it right away? And I understand that there are some fears with that, where it's like, what if people don't like my work? Or, what if I don't ever make any money from it or whatever? And it's like, well, you won't ever, find out if you don't give it a try. So I had that like within me for a little bit when I first went to like publish the first book that I wrote. I was like, oh, what if people just like absolutely hate this? But then I was like, well, I'll never know unless I actually do it. And, even if people do hate it, it doesn't mean that I have to give up on like creating. I can just continue to try to make something else, and I'll learn from that, and I'll be able to make the next thing even better. So, even if you're like 60 years old right now, why wouldn't you just go ahead and write it? Because, in another 10 years, who knows how it could have panned out over those 10 years, but you will not know until you try it. And then when you were saying with success and like what it means to me, I have always thought that success should be defined by the individual, right? So, like you said, for some people, it might be like making a certain amount of money. But I also agree with what you're saying, where it's like, yeah, even if you become a millionaire, it's like, okay, there's always going to be someone that has more money than you. So honestly, well, I think like friendly competition is good. I also think it's almost like perversion to want to be better than other people, right? Like if you're only happy and you only feel successful because other people are doing worse than you, that's not success. That's like a perversive thought almost, right? It's like you can only be happy if like these people are making less money than you, or if you have a nicer car than your neighbor or something. You're not going to be able to take away any of these things, when you leave this world. And like we've talked about, you're only here for a short period of time. You won't be able to take your car or your money or anything like that. At the end of the day, the only thing you'll be able to take are the experiences that you had. So to me, success is like having the ultimate experience of life when it comes to your emotions, your energy, how you feel on a daily basis. That is true success. So like I said, I am far from being a millionaire, but I wake up every day very happy, honestly. And it's because I'm, pursuing what I want to do. I have some time to go out in nature, which is something that brings me a lot of joy. I try to make the most of every moment as much as I can. And it's not something that I'm able to always stay the most conscious of, but it's something I always actively try.
Yeah, I think true success is like living like an earthling. Like you said, having a life where you feel good and you feel like that. I feel what spiritually is referred to as alignment with our higher self. We feel like we're where we want to be. And I feel like that's true success. And you have defined it so beautifully. It's like exactly what you're saying. If not, I've seen like a lot of people have say numbers and figures, but not miserable, are miserable, and are, I feel like also to add to it, it's like real success is living a life that you don't have to escape from, or you don't have to lie to yourself about. You're honest, even if it's good or if it's bad. There are moments where you're high and low, but you're still like there. with yourself, and you're doing what you can do to, elevate your life experience and live in a way that is rewarding to you. And I feel like we can't compare such things. It's very individual when we say that, when we compare, and society, forces us to have all these benchmarks and, like standards, and we're like, okay, this is what success should look like, this much. If you're only a millionaire, you will be successful. But probably when you're a millionaire, you might be miserable, right? I'm not saying you will be, but might be. But what if now if you can wake up in the morning and, you can be happy, and like you said, that is real, that is life, because we forget that life is right now, and very soon, again, we're here briefly, right? We have to make the most of the now. And, because what you said, it's a very spiritual as well. A lot of people, whether it's all the teachers, in fact, are talking about this. It's like, how enhancing your life experience, making the most of now. And you're also a full follower of, Sadhguru. How did you come across Sadhguru, and what is it about him that you feel like, you drawn to him for, like you look up to him as a teacher?
Oh, that's a very good, very good. I always like to talk about my guru, obviously, but just because he's had for someone that I have not met in person, the profound impact that he has had on my life is just, I can't even, I'm so thankful to him, honestly. And I know that there are countless amounts of people out there that are. But I guess the way that I initially was kind of introduced to him was, I would say I was around 18 or so, and I was kind of starting to look for, is there something more? That's like right around the age when, you're about to go, people are pressuring you to go to college for, you should go for this or that, or you should or shouldn't go to college, or you should go right into work. People are all trying to tell you what you should and shouldn't do. And I was just like, there's got to be something more to this life than just a job and these societal norms that we were talking about. Like, I don't really care so much about those things. I know they're necessary, and it's good to be passionate about what you're doing, yes, because it is a necessary thing, but I just wanted my experience to deepen. And so I started looking into different spiritual paths, right? Because that seemed like the most ideal way. These certain beings or certain people throughout history even seemed like they knew something that a lot of us didn't, or they seemed like their experience of life was so much happier and more dynamic, right? And that's what I wanted. Like, I have never let go of that desire for like adventure and liveliness, and just wanting to feel joy ever since I was a little kid, as much as I possibly can. And so I got into, initially got into what was called like spiritual alchemy. And then, I'm sure we all love the word alchemy. I mean, to me, it's like one of my favorite words, right? It's like taking one thing and transforming it into something even higher or more beautiful, right? And, I got into that, and I was like, this doesn't seem the most fitting for me, but it was cool. And then I got into like Taoism, and like I studied a lot of like the teachings of like Lao Tzu and stuff like that. And I really I liked that one a lot, and I started I liked his philosophy a lot anyway. But I needed like a practical approach of something that I could actually do, that could perhaps enhance my experience of life. I didn't just want more thoughts in my head, right? While I appreciated, his thoughts and stuff and his wisdom, I still wanted some type of action I could take, right? To bring this dynamism into my life. And so I kind of like, lost interest in that for a little bit. And then honestly, the way that I first saw Sadhguru was just on YouTube. Like, it came up on my recommended like page, and it was just some random video, and I was like, oh, this guy looks interesting. Clicked on it, and this was, like I said, almost like 4 or 5 years ago now, and I don't even remember what the topic was, but I was just like, wow, this guy seems like he knows something more than like most people do when it comes to the things that I want to know about and experience. So then, of course, I fell into like a rabbit hole of watching a bunch of the videos. And then I ordered, the first book of his I read was also Inner Engineering. And I was just like, that to me was definitely like, I hadn't necessarily said he was like my guru at that time yet, but I was like, for me, as someone who writes, to hear that in book form was huge, because he's a very good writer and speaker as well, obviously. And so, yeah, And then I ordered a couple more of his books and I read them. And then I was like, okay, well, I'm kind of falling into the same thing where what action can I take? But he offers these yogic practices, right, that you can do. And it's not yoga like over here in America. A lot of people think of yoga as just bending your body in a bunch of weird ways and stuff, right? But truly, like the real meaning of yoga is union. It's to become one with everything, which is something that I always desired. And to experience, right? To experience more of becoming one with everything. Like when we're out in nature, we experience and stuff. And so, and I was like, okay, I'll give this meditation kind of spiritual practice a try. And he has like a completely free one that took like 12 minutes, and it was just on a YouTube video. And it's called like the Isha Kriya. And so I started practicing that regularly, and it was so cool because it was actually something that I could experience. I didn't have to just like trust it. I didn't just have to, like, even he says, like, he wants people to be a skeptic. That's why he gives you the actual practices to try. And if they don't work for you, he says, move on. And of all those different spiritual practices that I tried, and there's few things that I have stuck with in my life for a long period of time, writing being one of them, right? I just could not shake him. Sometimes I would not do the practices for a little while, but I would always come back to it because I had experienced something more when I did it. So, nowadays, I've taken like some more advanced classes and stuff where I've learned some more advanced practices. And yeah, I do one once or twice every single day now, and it has just greatly deepened my experience of life for sure.
Absolutely. And because you mentioned meditation, and I also meditate, and I found meditation to be something which is very it really has a lot of benefits. It actually, like my own awakening began the moment I started meditating. For me, I used to listen to Mind Valley, 6 phase meditation. So that was what started. So I felt like, meditation was something which enabled me to connect with my truth. For me, meditation was the hardest thing to do because I couldn't stay still because I'm like so distracted all the time. But then that was old me. And after meditation, I feel like now it's like, I don't know. I'm a completely different person. What is your take on meditation, and how did it influence you as a creator? And if it did, how did it do?
For sure. So I would say, first of all, totally I can understand where, if you have a lot of racing thoughts all the time and you don't know like which ones you should act on when and how important they are and stuff, meditation definitely has helped me out with that as well, like a ton. And like a lot of people, like they keep themselves from even trying meditation because they think like, oh, I can't stop my thoughts when I'm meditating. Like I just still have thoughts while I meditate. Well, it's like, of course you still have thoughts. That's not necessarily the total point of meditation, is just to make your mind completely blank. Would you want your brain is what produces your thoughts on an organ level, right? Would you want your heart to stop when you're meditating? No, right? So of course you don't want your brain to stop either. It's just like you want to be able to put some space between you and your thoughts. You want to be able to better distinguish, how important this one is over that one, or how important they even are in general, right? So it's kind of just taking some distance between you and your body and you and your mind. But I wouldn't let not being able to stop your thoughts keep you from trying meditation, because even when I meditate to this day, and I've done it for a very long period of time, I still have thoughts that come into my mind as I meditate. I just try not to pay any attention to them. And the longer you do it, the less attention you will feel you have to pay to them. So definitely helps with racing thoughts and stuff like that. But for me, with the creative side of things, definitely it has helped me tap more into, like you said, like a higher self type of thing. If I am going to, do something even like this podcast, or if I'm going to write something, I always make sure I get in like my daily like spiritual practice, which is a form of meditation, combined with like breathing exercises and stuff, because I know that after I do it, I will be better prepared to give my best. And I want to always give my best when it comes to things like this and stuff like that. So it is an integral part of my creative process to maintain that on a daily basis anyway. As long as I do it at least once a day, I feel like I am at least moving or staying in the right direction.
I agree. Like your description of meditation, my own journey was more like understanding what really is meditation. There's so much content on YouTube as well when you're looking for what works for you. So what you said is like there will be thoughts, but it's just 1 minute probably of absolute, like you're there somewhere. You don't, nothing else matters. The outside world dissolves and you're like in that moment, in that feeling. Absolutely. And I found honestly, like I was looking for, okay, what is my type of meditation? I did ask myself in the journey of finding what really meditation means. And you have described it exactly. And I wanted to ask you one more thing. Like you seem like somebody who's so calm and peaceful. Like your vibe, like every time I speak to you, even now, the entirety of the podcast, you're somebody who has been able to maintain a sense of balance. It's like you're at peace. How do you do that? How have you achieved that state?
Part of it is certain breathing exercises. Some of it is emitting certain sounds. And there is like a whole science to it and stuff. But rather than, explain all of that, it's just like a multi-component exercise where it does involve some bending of the body, but it's nothing like crazy. It's something anyone could do for sure. And some breathing and some emitting certain sounds, basically, in a certain order, right? And a lot of people, to some people, it might seem kind of too far out. But to me, it was something that one of the reasons why I really wanted to get into this practice for the longest time was it's designed to work on not just like the physical body and the mental body and the emotional body, but also like the energy body. And I'm sure you probably seem like someone who would, agree that we have like an energy to us all, right? We all have a different energy for sure, or an aura or something like that. And that was something that always fascinated me as a kid, was like, I want to know more about this life energy stuff. So, some people call it chi, or, I want to know more about the different chakras and stuff like that. And there's so much spiritual garbage out there, like you said, that it was so hard to sort through. And that's why I was very thankful to find someone that I trusted with like Sadhguru. So now, like, I personally just practice stuff from him. But there are also so many different paths and meditations that are genuine as well. And ultimately, you just have to find what, feels correct to you.
I think, the conversation became pretty interesting when you mentioned energy. And it's like, I completely believe in energy myself. Like you said, you're curious. I've also been. And I feel like what I have, in my case, I write and I kind of ask these questions and I feel like it puts me in a receiving mode. And I found like assurance that everything indeed is in fact energy. And what you said, like I feel like you have been able to, what is the word for it? More like use it, achieve a state of balance by your whatever all the practices that you mentioned. It's more like you have been able to rein it in, and should actually helps. And everything is energy, because I feel like that explains. I used to have a lot of questions, about law of attraction, about what is, like you said, like all these questions. What is there more to life than what is being currently presented to us? What is the concept of LOA? And why we are here? The basic question, the most important question was, why are we even here in the first place? Which is what gave rise to the being an earthling concept. So it was like, I felt like the answer that came to me by all this questioning, my own path, why we are traveling, by our spirituality, all the teachers that I seeked out to, was that everything is indeed energy. And the idea is to just be in a state of flow such that, which I feel like you already embody, such that you can reap most out of it, like I felt like being a creator is something that helps you, be in that flow state. Like when we are inspired to create whatever it is, probably you're inspired to do your practices. That's also creation, right? And I feel like when we are creating, we are in a state of flow and we are energetically aligned with our truth. And absolutely. So can you, say a little more about your view about the concept of energy and quantum, and not quantum, but more like what you feel about energy based on your personal experiences?
For sure, yeah. So I personally, and this is just my belief, right? So, but it's something that I am actively trying to experience. So it's no longer, one day it will hopefully no longer be less and less of a belief and more of my own current experience. And that's kind of what yogic practices that work on the energy level are all designed to do, is to bring these things into your actual experience. So then there's no more trusting, which, I'm not anti-religion or anything at all, but with some religions, they require a lot of trust, right? And it's like with this was better suited for me because it didn't require me to trust anything. It was just try it out. If it works for you, keep on doing it. But I picture, like you said, everything is just energy. And ultimately, though this energy is in different expressions, it's all just the same energy. I like this, like I even have a tattoo of this symbol. It's called the Ouroboros, right? And it's like a snake or a dragon that's biting its own tail. And it kind of symbolizes how everything is connected, right? So this is something I actively try to do on a daily basis, is just be more aware that, a tree and I are the same thing. It's just a different expression of energy. Or me and the moon are the same thing, but it's just a different expression. And it's beautiful. Like this fact that we have individuality is like something that's like a blessing to experience, right? But ultimately, I think it's important to try to be conscious of the fact that we are all just one energy. And even modern science, is saying how everything is just one giant reverberation. It's just one mass thing of energy in different expressions, right? All about trying to experience more of everything else as yourself, right? And like you said, creating, right? It makes us feel more connected with our higher self. And it's like, no matter what type of creator you believe in, whether it's the God from this religion or that God, or just the universe as a thing, or Shiva or whatever, right? No matter what it is you believe in, if you believe at all, or you even are suspicious that there is some type of higher power, I am all about tapping into the part of that that's in all of us. Because I personally just believe that whatever you want to call that, the source of everything is within all of us. And so when we personally create stuff, of course, that's like tapping into that higher self the most, because you're tapping into the very thing that created everything, whatever you want to call that, right? And I think it's pretty beautiful that there's all kinds of different religions and spiritual practices that all kind of call that one thing something else, right? But it's good that there's different paths, because different paths appeal more to different people. But ultimately, it's all about discovering like the creator within yourself.
Yeah, I absolutely. When you mentioned, when you earlier said that, we were talking about meditation, you said that go for the practice that feels good to you. And that was such an apt word, because when we say energy is a vibration. And everything that we do in life, it's identified by how we feel. If you're feeling good, we're in flow, in the right path, and we're not feeling good, then we have to. I personally felt, whatever I've come to my own realizations, this negative emotion is nothing but an indicator that we are not in flow. It's more like a red light, and then the idea is to just get back into the flow however we can.
I had to go through trial and error of finding a path that worked for me when it came to tapping into the higher self, basically. So I feel like, there's meditation and there's meditativeness, and you can experience meditativeness throughout any type of numerous activities, right? Whether it's creating something, writing poetry, being out in nature, getting super thrown into some type of physical activity like a sport, playing music, whatever. I feel like people should just seek out those types of things, and if it's like a yogic practice, or if it's playing something intensely or creating something, just do more of those things. And I feel like your whole life will be better aligned with the higher self. And if you're more aligned with the higher self, I feel like things are more bound to go in the direction that you want them to go. You take more of that fate into your own hands, right? You become more of the maker of your own destiny when you tap into that type of feeling. So, trust your intuition a little bit. We all know what's good and what's bad for us ultimately if we take some time to self-reflect. So seek out those things is what I would say.
Absolutely. And like, also what I feel is like, in our own respective journeys, it's more like we are constantly in a state of asking more and more. We're never satisfied. It's like you said, going forward, your dreams and aspirations, what you want to do, you already mentioned that. And like, even if we have asked those questions in the past and we have found our answers, and we are forever inspired to keep doing more and more. Because if we don't, then we feel negative emotion. And very organically, I think, I don't know about you, I'm sure it's you also experience it. It's more like if suppose we're talking about these things, and if I don't act on it, or if I don't keep, like you said, you have those daily practices, right? And if you don't do it, you feel the difference. You're drawn to it. Like you have to keep doing them when you're doing them, because you're in the flow state and you're already creating. I feel like when we're in eternal universe, right? We are constantly evolving, and we have to, because if we don't, then we feel negative emotion, and we feel negative emotion, we will be again organically inspired to act on it. So I feel like that is what ultimately, life is supposed to be about. Being an earthling is about be in this flow state. And finally, I think one last question, came to my mind was like, to end this, it's like, if anything was possible and if money were no object, how would you see yourself living?
The goal for me for sure is to reach that point as soon as possible, not to where I'm extravagantly rich, but just to where money is no longer a worry, right? Or something that I have to be concerned about on a daily basis. And so when, manifesting that happens in my life, it's funny, I don't see too much changing in what I do on a daily basis, except for the fact of maybe like location wise, right? Like I definitely have a lot of places that I would like to travel to. So I would spend a lot of time traveling to not only experience new places and new people, but to then put those experiences into my writing, right? And I would definitely do a lot more. I feel like I would be putting out a lot more books and poetry and stuff on a daily basis. I feel like I would also be super happy because I would have more time to introduce more of these types of practices that I do and learn more advanced ones and stuff, and introduce those into my life. So it would give me more time to really just sit and enjoy life, or be active in the ways that I want to be, which is like exploring, places all over the world, and writing about my experiences. That to me would ultimately be like perfect.
I think, the funny thing is, I ask, whenever I ask this question to somebody, most of the times when people say that I don't really want to change much, that part, this thing kind of points out to the thing that even if we have our dreams and aspirations, right now also we have certain things in our life that we which gives us joy, and so much so that basically is an indicator that we already are in the flow state. We don't have, it's not something that we have to achieve in the future, but right now. And if you just take a moment and take a breath and just focus on those moments, it has the capacity to make us feel better automatically.